Hi, my name is Justin Richardson. I'm with Direct Colors. I'm going to do a quick video for you on applying the DCI concrete overlay. Before we get into the application process, I'd like to visit with you a little bit about surface prep. Surface prep is really key to having a successful application of overlay so it does not pop or delaminate somewhere on you down the line. One of the first things you want to do certainly is make sure everything is nice and clean, get any sod debris or surface debris completely cleaned off there. Come back and sand it. You could sand it with a 50 to an 80 grit, or if you wanted to, you could use a concrete prep tool called a dimer brush. Those will both add some texture to it. Before you actually get into overlaying, if you've got some surface cracks or anything deeper than just a surface crack, or if you have spalling or divots, pop marks in your concrete, you're going to want to skim those in with this material. So pour a little bit of the material out of the box, add some water, get it to about a pancake batter consistency, and just sort of like spackling a hole in a wall, just go through and fill those and smooth them. Once it's dry, give it a light sand. Once everything is even, the cracks are filled, the pop marks are filled in, then you could come back and overlay it. It's important to do that little first step, because if you try to overlay over all the little unevenness or inconsistencies, it'll look great whenever you apply the material, but as the moisture comes out of it, it's going to sink a little bit, and then you're going to wind up with a little low spot, and you would have to come back and overlay that anyway. So knock out the low spots first, let it dry, give it a really light sanding, probably no more than a 150, 200 grit level, and then come back and apply your overlay accordingly. We'll move on and show you how to get this stuff put down. I think you'll find the video interesting and helpful, and you'll see just how easy it is. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the surface preparation for applying the DCI overlay. We're going to move right over here, talk a little bit about the mixing, the tools that we're going to use to mix it with, give you some pointers here. For what we're doing today, a 5-gallon bucket is sufficient to mix in, and that really takes care of most projects. If you get into a really large project, you can use drum mixers with this material just as well. What I have right here is a 5-gallon bucket of our overlay, a little bit of water next to it. I've got a drill mixer. We're going to talk a little bit about the mixing paddles. On this particular drill mixer, I'm using what we call a birdcage mixer. I like the birdcage because it does have the ring around the bottom that allows me to mix into the corners of a bucket. You could also use a double box blade mixer. Anything that's oval shaped is a little tricky to use whenever you're working in the bucket, because it won't get down into the bottom corners, and you could have dry powder or dry pigment get in there and wind up streaking your project. We don't want that. So I've also got a little pigment we're going to add to this, so you can see what this will look like if we were to put some color in it. I'm going to go ahead and take my pigments. This is a raw pigment color. It's in no relationship to what the finished color is going to look like. This is going to be kind of a tan when we're finished. I'm going to go ahead and dump this. I've already pre-measured the appropriate amount. I'm going to dump it into my overlay. I'm going to put this drill mixer in here and give it a quick spin, just to kind of stir that in a little bit. It's not very heavy. Okay, now that color is a little bit more dispersed. I'm going to add water. Your water addition to this product can be a maximum of 2 gallons of water. You don't want to exceed 2 gallons per 50-pound box of overlay. It'll get a little too soft and deteriorate the strength of it too much. Most people like it around 1.5 gallons to 1.75 gallons of water per 50-pound box. Makes it very workable, easy to trowel out. Right here, I'm going to mix it to a consistency. I'm going to try to get it to about a pancake batter consistency. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of water in here. If that's not enough, I can come back and add a little bit more in just a second. You can see as I mix this, we've gone from a gray to really a brown color, which is what we're going for with the addition of the pigment. Once you start to mix it in with water, the pigment really starts to show up. I'm going to keep mixing this for a few more minutes just to make sure I've got all the clumps and clods out. We don't want that to show up in the finish. Okay, that should be pretty good. We've got a nice consistency with it. That's about what I was shooting for. It is a pancake batter consistency. You can see it moving around in there. Again, you can make it a little drier or a little wetter if you need to. That's about where I like to work with it. What we're going to do now is transition back to our table. I've got a piece of hardy backer board, just a cement backer board, that we're going to put this on. The same application principles apply whether you're using a backer board or whether you're doing your patio or your interior floors. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so we've got everything mixed up. You've seen what that looks like. It's pretty straightforward and simple. Like we said, it is just an add water product, and that's really all we've done. Some overlays might require a copolymer to go down before you apply the overlay. This one does not. As long as your surface is profiled, like we've already talked about, you could just put this straight down on your existing concrete. It is dry polymer fortified. It's very sticky. What we're going to work on today, as I'd mentioned, is a piece of hardy backer board. The principles are the same, whether you're applying direct to concrete or a backer board. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this piece of backer board real quick. You'll notice, if you worked with this before, you already know, that it's gridded on one side. It has grooves. They've got their branding where it'll say hardy backer board on it in different places. I don't like to overlay this side. The opposite side, the back side, has plenty of texture. Your overlay will stick to it just fine, and you don't have to worry about these little grid lines showing up in your finish. So what I like to do whenever I'm overlaying on a piece of backer board, say I'm refinishing a countertop, or if I'm building an outdoor kitchen or something like that, I'll apply this backer board to a 3/4 piece of plywood, screw it down with some solvent or some corrosive resistant screws, fill in the seams with a caulking or epoxy, and then come back and overlay over the top of it. So here's the overlay we mixed. I've got a tool right here called a magic trowel. This is really handy if you don't have a lot of experience with a metal trowel or steel trowels. This has a soft squeegee blade. I don't know if you can see that moving, but if you try to use a metal trowel, every little twitch you have in your movement is going to translate into your finish. This gives you a little bit of forgiveness, so it's a great tool. Direct Colors does sell these in 12-inch, 18, and 22-inch widths. This is an 18-inch width. I think it'll work really good for the project we're doing at hand. So what I have, this has already been cleaned. This is the back side of a piece of hardy backer board. This is the overlay. We've already added the pigment, and you're going to see how quick and easy this process goes. I'm just going to pour a ribbon of the material down the middle, just like so. I'm not going to be too worried about overage. I'll have a little bit of extra material on this as we finish out the project. And I'm going to grab my trowel. The jacket is off. I'm just going to start smoothing this out a little bit. You'll see how quick and easy this goes. Just bring it to the edge. Don't worry about what goes over. Smooth it out. Bring it down. Now this is a little heavier than a skim coat because I've got more material. I just didn't want to run out of material on the demonstration. But I've got more material than I need for this. Then I'll come back and just give it a quick smooth finish right there, all the way down to the end, and repeat all the way down to the finish. You might get a little bit of ridge line like this. You can smooth those out as best you can. It's getting nice and smooth right there. Definitely cover up your cabinetry. Anything that you have that you don't want the overlay to get on, put plastic down on your floor because you will be a little bit messy with this. And we're just smoothing. Now at a certain point, the material will start to get a little bit dry. And if that happens, it's not anything to worry about. Get you a little spritzer bottle like this, just plain water. You could also use a liquid tool release, but you could set this to where it's got a little bit of mist, and you could mist the surface of your overlay a little bit. What that'll do is allow a little bit of that cream to come back up and give you a little bit of a softer finish. You can press down a little bit if you want to get more material off and get down closer to a skim coat. But it's very, very simple. You see the color is very nice. This was our sand 1. It will lighten as this dries. You'll get a little lighter tan. I just keep screening this down a little bit because it's a little on the thick side for what I want. And that's about it. It's very simple to apply. Once you get, if you're doing a loose piece or a loose countertop, you can kind of raise that up and get a clean edge if you want to. Now, if you're putting this on a larger project, like a floor, you're going to want to have 2 people. You're going to have one person applying, like what you just saw. Start in a far corner, work yourself back out of the room. Keep your work in front of you. A second person is going to be mixing and bringing you fresh buckets of material so you can keep going. You don't want to stop and have it dry or start to dry and then come and try to overlay over your dry area. You want to keep a consistent mix as you're going. The person who's bringing you the next bucket needs to bring you clean buckets. They don't want to take an old bucket that's already been mixed and then automatically start dumping into that bucket. You'll get dry particles as it begins to dry into your mix, and it'll trowel into your finish. You don't want that. So this is a pretty nice finish right here. We've got the integral color. As I mentioned in the lead-in, there's about 116 colors you could color your overlay with. It's pretty extensive. It's also a product that you can acid stain. I've got 10 different colors of acid stain that you could come back, and it's actually hyper-reactive to acid stain. It's got a lot of Portland concrete or Portland cement in it. So that's pretty much the process. We're going to come back in a little while and show you a little bit about sanding. So if you get these little ridge lines, I've left some ridge lines in here on purpose. I'll show you how easy those are to sand out if you get on them at the appropriate time. Okay, we're back here with the overlaid surface that we've been working on. This was the overlay with the integral color of San Juan in it. Got a really pretty tan color. When we're looking at sanding your floor, you're either going to have a sanding screen and a floor sander, or you might be using a swing buffer with a sanding pad on the bottom of it. Probably about a 200 to a 220 grit will do the job. For this small piece right here, I'm just using a sanding block. This has set for about 8 to 10 hours. It's pretty well dried out. All the moisture is gone off of it, and this is about an optimal time to sand it. Now, with a floor sander or heavier equipment, give it a little bit longer to dry, or else you'll sand through it really too quickly. But I want to show you real quick just how easy this stuff can sand. It's very hard. It's about a 9,000 plus PSI, so it's very hard, but it will sand down pretty good. We've got a couple of little drips that came off the trowel whenever I finished overlaying this. I'll just show you real quick how easy that sands out. And that's gone. So it sands off really quick. Now, on a side note, if you happen to have overlaid a countertop and you've got some rough edges like this, this will also sand out very easy, and I'll show you that real quick. And that's about how easy it can be to sand your countertops and or your floors. We're going to move into showing you the sealing process now. What I have here are 2 of our most popular floor sealers. They are acrylic sealers. I'm going to do half of this in a solvent-based, half of it in a water-based. I think it's important to show you that because there's a dramatic color difference between water-based and solvent-based sealers. This will be a great way for you to see it. A solvent-based does pop the color intensely, several shades more than a water-based, but we'll go ahead and get to that, and I'll show you what it's going to look like. Get the dust and the debris wiped off here. Okay, These are the sealers we're going to work with. This one is the DCI water-based sealer. It looks like milk in a jug here. It's a fantastic sealer. These are all manufactured here by Direct Colors. Has a great solids count, gives you a very nice durable finish. This one is our DCI sprayable satin sealer. This is a satin finish solvent-based sealer. You can spray this on through a pump sprayer, really either one of them. You could put on with a pump-up deck sprayer, or you could use a 3/8 inch nap roller. For the size project that I'm working on right here, just using a mini roller, it's a 3/8 inch nap on a 4-inch roller. For your floor, you'd use a regular paint roller. If you're using a solvent base, you need to get a solvent-resistant core. Otherwise, the solvents in your sealer will eat up the core and start releasing fuzz into your finish. So let me go ahead and start with the water base. We're just going to use a little dish right here. For your water base at home, if you're doing a floor, you would use a plastic paint tray. That would be just fine. Not going to take a whole lot of this to get half of this sealed. This has already been defuzzed. It's important to run your rollers over packing tape or something sticky to pull the loose fuzz out of it so it doesn't wind up in your finish. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and saturate the roller, get it rolled around, and then I'll run it up the side here and get some of the excess off of it. And we'll start getting this applied to the finish. When you put this on, it does look a little bit milky. Kind of has a blue tint to it. That does go away. It will finish out clear. When you're sealing, you want to put 2 coats of sealer down on your floor. 2 thin coats. You never want to go too thick. Thin coats are always, 2 thin coats are always going to be stronger and more durable of a surface than trying to put down a single thick coat. You don't want to shortcut it. Whenever you're rolling out, if it's kind of like painting a wall. Whenever you're rolling, if it starts to get a little thin, you don't have as much material in your roller, don't bear down on your roller and force material out. Just go ahead and wet your roller again, because when you bear down on it, material is going to start spilling out to the edges, and you're going to get a heavier application out towards the sides of your roller. That can lead to roller lines. Let the weight of the roller do the job, and then come back and wet it as necessary. So we're just going to finish getting this smoothed out. The overlay is very absorptive, so you're seeing it's drying out very quickly. It's not really drying so quickly, it's just absorbing really quickly. We're going to get these little lines rolled out, make it nice and even. So you can see with the water base just what happens with the color. It does darken it pretty significantly from the unsealed surface. It looks like a completely different color. As it dries, it's going to lighten a little bit from what you're seeing right here. Okay. Now what you'll do on a water-based sealer is you give it about 12 hours before you come back and coat it with your second coat. This is going to soak in pretty quick, like we said. So here pretty quickly, I'm going to go ahead and do a second coat so you can see what it looks like. On your second coat, if you've done one in a north-south, come back and do your second coat east-west. That way, if you've got any kind of roller lines or anything like that, it's going to help you even those out and get a nice even finish. I think this is soaked in enough on the overlay. On an actual floor that is not a concrete overlay, it's going to take it a little bit longer than what you're seeing right here. I'm going to go ahead and put this second coat down real quick. And again, like I mentioned, we're going to go east-west. It's a very simple process. Acrylic sealers are the easiest sealer to work with. There are other sealers, coatings, polyurethanes, epoxies, things like that. They're not quite so easy to put down. Acrylics are. Probably 90% of residential and light commercial are used with acrylic sealers, followed up with a wax coat finish. Direct Colors does carry all those materials to get you completely from the beginning to the end of your project. On your final roll, after you've spread everything out, you do want to kind of start at the beginning and roll all the way across as best as you can, rather than having a hard stop in the middle, because that could leave a little identifiable mark. So that's all I'm doing, is just giving it one roll across. Now you might not be able to do that on a large floor, but try to keep on your final finish roll, if you will, as single of a stroke as you can. Okay, so that's what the water-based half is going to look like. I'm going to move over here, show you what it looks like with the solvent-based. Solvent-based is a great sealer. Most of the advantages come from the solvent-based sealer in terms of color. Pops the color better. Ease of application. This has a little more temperature restrictions. Whenever your temperatures are colder, you got to be very careful about what you're doing with water-based. We've got a lot of how-to information on our website. You can check that out. That will let you know about the temperature restrictions on water-based. So I'm going to set that to the side. I've got another roller here that we're going to use, also defuzzed and ready to use with the solvent-based sealer. Again, this is the sprayable satin sealer, solvent-based. I'm going to go ahead and pop the lid off. Here you would want a solvent-resistant core, as we mentioned, so it doesn't damage and release fuzz into your finish. And here you would want to use a metal paint tray. You don't want to put this into a plastic paint tray. It will eat the plastic, melt through, and give you a big mess. Okay, I don't have the metal paint tray, so I'm just going to dip my roller into this material. This is clear like water, has a very strong odor, so you want good ventilation when you're putting this down. If you're in limited ventilation, maybe even if you're not in limited, or if you've got good ventilation, you may still want to wear a half-face respirator to protect yourself from the odor, because it is strong, especially on larger square footages. So I'm going to go ahead and wet the roller here. I'm going to squeeze a little bit of that stuff out. Again, thin coats. We don't want it down really heavy. 2 thin coats, stronger, more durable finish. Okay, so we're going to start right where we picked up with the water base right here. You're going to see an immediate difference in the way this looks. It's already shinier, it's clear. This was milky when it went down, this goes down clear, and it automatically pops the color dramatically different than the water base. You'll see a little bit of line. I don't know if you can see this in the close-up shot, but you'll see some lines. Those are all going to blend. That's just the speed at which the material is soaking into this surface. When it all soaks in, you're going to have an even color. This sealer is very forgiving to work with. If you do get some blemishes or something in the finish that you don't like on your first coat, typically you could come back with your second coat and it will emulsify that first coat just enough to fix some of the mistakes or the blemishes or whatever. So a lot of forgiveness in working with this. Makes it super DIY friendly. Your coverage rates on this sealer is about 200 square feet per gallon. Same thing with the water-based sealer. That does give you roughly enough for 2 coats. Depending on porosity of concrete, the more porous you'll get a little less, the slicker the finish you'll get a little bit more. Okay, so we've got a single coat on here. I'm going to go back, I'm going to give it the little finish roll real quick, make sure everything's nice and even. This sealer really goes down beautifully. It is one of our best selling. I do want to make mention this is a satin finish. We do offer both of these sealers, both water-based and solvent-based acrylics, in a gloss as well. Okay, so I'm going to let that soak in for just a minute. On your solvent-based, unlike the acrylic, your second coat comes in about 12 hours later. On your solvent-based, this will be dry enough to come back and recoat in about 6 hours. That's going to change a little bit depending on your humidity levels. If you have high humidity, it's going to take it a little bit longer to cure. Avoid the temptation in 2 hours if it looks dry and feels dry. Avoid the temptation to rush it. because it's not just about it looking and feeling dry. Those acrylics need to harden. And it takes about 6 hours for those acrylics to harden enough for you to get back out and walk on that to be able to put the second coat on. You don't want to walk while they're too soft. This is still wet. You could go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and put the second crosshatch on, which is just going to even out anything that would be inconsistent. This would be the equivalent of your second coat 6 hours later. It's going to go pretty quick. Your second coat generally applies very, very quick because you've already got a layer of sealer down, and the concrete itself is less absorptive, so it's a very, very quick application. Okay, so that's applying the sealer. A few little quick notes before we move on and conclude the video here. If we were outside, patios, sidewalks, driveways, anything like that, this would be the last process. Putting your second coat of sealer down would be the finish. And then it's just a question of letting it cure out for about 24 hours before you get foot traffic on it. For interior, your next to last step here. Your next step after your second coat has cured for about 12 to 24 hours, you're going to need to come back and put a floor wax and polish on it. The floor wax and polish is an important step because that is your maintenance coat. You do need a maintenance coat because after a little while you're going to get micro abrasion and wear, especially in your high traffic areas, and it's going to dull the surface a little bit. If you just went with sealer and tried to spot treat with the sealer, it's going to stand out like a new penny compared to the rest of the floor. As opposed to a floor wax and polish, you get your floor done with that high traffic area, spot treat with the polish, and you're in good shape. You don't have to do this the whole floor every time. And that's pretty much what you're looking at. Very easy process. If you do have any questions about the process, about the how-to, about any of the products we've talked about, please give us a call. Our phone number is 405-275-6657. Our website is www.directcolors.com. Either look us up, search us out online, our how-to information, or give us a call. We've got a great technical support team that's on hand to help you out. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.